Everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like. Mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Live healthy. I mix what I like, what I like.
We're here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy liked and other cool things.
Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on I Mix What I Like. Welcome, 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 everybody who's able to join us here live. To those who will see this later, peace, welcome to you as well. Everybody, if you would, you know the things, please do all the things, like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, join the platform if you can, all of those good things. And welcome. Peace, everybody who's here. Good to see you. Thanks for coming through. Big shout out to Millennials Are Killing Capitalism and that incredible tribute they are still, I think, giving to Ka, who recently passed. And obviously feel free to stay there or go back over there or go there and come back here later. It's all good. This is, more an issue of just scheduling, timing. It's lunchtime, a little lunchtime live, something, I wanted to do a Saturday night live, but I can't stay up that late and be functional. You know what I'm saying? Oh, stop playing. Big Rose in the building. Good to see you. I've been messing with teasing him about checking in, and I appreciate it. Good to see you. Yeah, definitely. I understand. So obviously all respect to Ka and those who appreciate him, and just good music, good art. Folks, it's a lot of folks roughly my age leaving too soon. So, but that said, there are a couple things I did want to get to today, not to take up all day, though. We'll see how things go. A couple things that have been reached my attention that I thought we could discuss, have a little bit, hopefully even some fun with, especially in light of things happening around the world that are more serious. starting with the passing of Ka, obviously was happening in the so-called Middle East, throughout the continent of Africa, everywhere. There's a lot of things happening. And admittedly, we're not going to get to any of that seriousness here today. It's going to be a little bit of just a little serious, but mostly kind of silly. So definitely feel free if you are in a different headspace to tap back in another time. It's all good. But one thing I am going to start with is just some more of this buying power nonsense. Before we get to the sort of I guess the centerpiece of this lunch will be the recent visit of Kamala Harris to Roland Martin's platform, which was sent me by someone who is particularly interested in the issue of reparations, and who felt like after hearing that there was little hope for any, and we can come back and talk about that particular idea as well. But I think there's so much more to that really problem of an interview that we can. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm going to start here with this recent story from a week or so ago: break barriers and build relationships with multicultural consumers. Let's see, the Wine Industry Network. This is a story from Melanie Young in the Wine Industry Network. Statistics show the buying power of Black Americans, Asian Americans, and Latinx consumers is stronger than ever. Yet these audiences are often overlooked or under-budgeted in wine marketing. Now is the time to reprioritize. So again, there is the reveal in the headline or in the intro. And that is that buying power is not about the economic condition of Black people or any other community. It has nothing to do with income. It has nothing to do with wealth. It is an advertising marketing phrase. And specifically when targeting Black audiences, as is partially the case here, it is weaponized. So buying power as a concept is applied to any number of communities, municipalities, nations, businesses, etc. But it takes on a different connotation when applied to Black America in particular and to other oppressed communities by extension. So here again, this is it's about marketing wine, okay? According to management consulting firm McKinsey & Company, Black consumers' collective economic power is set to expand from about $910 billion in consumption in 2019 to $1.7 trillion in 2030. Without taking the time now, the report that they link to here is one, that I've covered here repeatedly, and as I will make sure to link in the show description here, we even have a McKinsey whistleblower who contacted me to corroborate my claims about what McKinsey is doing and how best to interpret their reporting. And again, McKinsey, much like their forebears in this industry, Selig, Nielsen, and the Selig Center and Nielsen, they are here to help companies market their products and to target their ad revenue more effectively. So it is not about assessing the actual economic condition of Black people, okay? Right in the next paragraph, the buying power of the U.S. Latinx population was predicted to exceed $1.9 trillion in 2023, according to a 2021 Nielsen report. And the Asian American Advertising Federation reports that the collective purchasing power of Asian Americans exceeds $1.6 trillion. at least in this context, I haven't done too much research into this group yet, but at least in this context, the Asian American Advertising Federation is more honest when relating what they're doing to their audience. It seems to end up in Black targeted media as though these numbers are coming from the highest levels of the most well-studied economic assessments meant to determine the condition and the pathway out of that condition for Black people. And that's not what is happening here. It is an advertising situation. So these figures are, as I keep repeating in their own documents, are, quote, estimates and, quote, projections based on surveys done on how certain numbers of consumers within certain communities spend what they spend on. It is extrapolated into some argument that Black people and others have some sort of power that is simply not true. Just a little bit more here. If you want people to believe in your brand, demonstrate that your brand stands for what they believe in, not what you believe in. Whoops. Just like any good propaganda or counterinsurgency, target and manipulate the symbols important to the communities you are targeting. So support Black History Month in February, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May, and National Hispanic American Heritage Month from September to October. But don't stop there. Create thoughtful wine and food pairings and events that honor culture and cuisine. So as we go back to, if we remember how Nielsen will talk about the conscious consumer and targeting, just symbolically referencing something Black. That's the way in. In McKinsey's May 22 report, again, I'll put some links in the show description to previous discussions of all these reports, but primarily I'm going to put the link into where the McKinsey whistleblower contacts me, and you can review that video if you like. But where these reports are revealed for what they are, which again are what I'm saying they are. They're not meant to help Black people understand their economic condition at all. In McKinsey's May 2022 report, Marketing to the Multifaceted Black Consumer, Shelley Stewart II writes, Black consumers are much more likely to seek out and place emphasis on brands that are trustworthy, have a clear social mission, appeal to their cultural values, and generally have credibility among the Black community. Again, this goes back to, if you remember, even when we had our back and forth with Dr. Julianne Malveaux, and she put me onto the $30 billion Negro book from her mentor, and he said the same thing. So this is a well-studied, long-argued, well, I don't know about well-studied, but a long-argued point about reaching Black consumers. Not to help them understand the economic condition of Black people, you know, it's meant to help them market their stuff. So somewhat related, I somehow missed this during my hate on cryptoganda. But did you all, I'm even just gonna play, I'm gonna let you hear it from this. So this channel I actually have come to really appreciate. I don't let's see. It well, I'll link to it in the show description. I don't know why the name doesn't come up here. Patrick Boyle. But
to learn early
but just check this.
This year from court documents that Snoop Dogg was paid around $1 million to perform as a bored ape at the MTV Video Music Awards in 2022. I suppose it makes sense that they paid him to do this. As a quick look at YouTube shows that the official music video of his Bored Ape song only got 3,600 views over the last 2 years, and at least 3,500 of those views were me. It's basically been on repeat play here the whole.
All right. I had no idea. I had no idea. That is it's not quite as bad as the Roots as a backup band for Jimmy Fallon, just given that the Roots have, Snoop had never hit the political and cultural sort of heights, by my estimation, that the Roots had. But damn, that is terrible. So I never saw that, thankfully. But I see, oh man. Yeah, yeah, I was just trying to look up something real quick. I don't know that I want to see. But again, just somewhat related even to what we're going to talk about in a minute. But the marketing of these products to Black communities often, I don't know to what extent Snoop was doing it, often involved claims that this was the pathway out of some economic inequality. But whether it's a rapper, because remember we talked about Tory Lanez doing this, Nas doing a version of this, selling NFTs. Whether it's a rapper, whether it's a scholar or a journalist or a podcaster, it is really blackface to very white corporate conservative financial devices. Whether they're claiming to be a bank and it's fintech, we're going to come back to, or whether it's an NFT, whether it's a cryptocurrency of some other kind. I mean, it is whether it's just in general, invest a certain way and you can close divides. All of these things are black fronting for white corporate commercial product. None of which is meant to actually explain to anyone how any of this works. So, all right. So one other, this was so wild. So KD, shout out to KD. I don't know if they're here today, but KD had at one point asked if I would do more to explain my point about how do we know what we know, why do we like what we like, and to quote a former professor of mine, to interrogate our preferences. Why am I making that argument? And I'll talk more about this maybe separately or over time, but one of the reasons, it's really not that deep. The real point of it is that increasingly it is already so. It was already so when Malcolm X said the United States had perfected the science of image making, but it is increasingly more so today that the United States has created and is creating the most sophisticated, pervasive, and penetrating media and propagandized psychological warfare media environment that the world has ever seen. It is not perfect. It clearly doesn't always work. But in terms of setting standards, setting definitions, setting the goalposts more or less for political discussion or historical analysis, whatever, I think it needs to be acknowledged that they have created something very impressive and are doing something very impressive. Again, there's a lot being done to circumvent that, but I that's at least where I'm. So it is becoming more and more difficult to, I think, conversely, particularly when we think about how when we think about history as we're encouraged to as some linear progression. the tendency is to think that we have more information available to us than ever. We have a greater capability than at any other time to get past this environment, media environment that I'm talking about. If I'm not fully there, I'm increasingly getting to the point that I think Barrett Brown clarified for me a little bit, that we're getting to the media environment is getting to this to such, and if again, if it wasn't for it, if not for perhaps, and maybe this is part of the lesson. In fact, this is McLuhan's lesson, that if were it not for the Al-Aqsa flood and actions like that, the narrative is easily maintained. So when McLuhan makes that point, that as satellites and the digital media technology that he was dealing with, that he, never mind what's happening today, creates the proscenium arch, that Greek theater arch that creates us as all the players on a world stage, where voiceless people cannot be heard unless they do those types of actions. That's what McLuhan was warning. That's what we saw on October 7th. And I think without that, the narrative is too easily maintained. And were it not for that, much of the narrative around many of these things, and is still the case for areas outside of that issue in particular, is very easily maintained, or more easily maintained, to deny real critical radical analysis and intellectual breaks from what's going on. So when my former professor said that we must interrogate our preferences, and despite even what we heard with that really good discussion, speaking of millennials are killing capitalism, with Gabriel Rockhill about, well, many other things, but when they talked about the Frankfurt School and Theodore Adorno, who in graduate school, I was able to look past his racism because I was appreciating, in the context of my graduate studies, what his crew was doing. But he was very Eurocentric, and more than I realized, racist and whatever. But what he did talk about was that media created a situation where we confuse like with recognition. So when Barrett Brown, I don't even think I finished that thought. When Barrett Brown makes the argument that we're getting to the point, because of that media environment that McLuhan was talking about, requiring certain actions to break through, when Barrett Brown says that we're getting to the point where we can't even, we're the idea of revolution is going to be taken off the table because people won't think that one is necessary. I think we are getting, if not there already, we're getting there. Again, especially pre-October 7th, I was definitely on the precipice of falling into that. But again, to McLuhan's point, all right. So the like with recognition piece has always really set with me, and that, so I always wanted to borrow from that former professor and his point about interrogating our preferences to say, even more simple, how do we know what we know, and why do we like what we like? And for almost 18 years now, that has been a core feature of every final exam I give to my students. I just want them, for one moment before they leave my class fully, to think, to the extent that actually works, to think about that. After a semester with me, not even to get you to change what you like, but to become more critical of it, because in this context, colonial, hostile, all of that media mean and communication mean within a colony. If you like something that is being accepted as part of sanctioned communication or official state sanctioned communication, be that through the state or through its emissaries in the corporate world, if you like it, I'm not saying don't not like it necessarily, but I do, as I do with myself, what is it about why do I like this? That's why when we were talking about the Fight Night series the other day with FD, I could say I have to acknowledge that I grew up appreciating the presentation of Black manhood as that stereotypical, if not fully thug, sort of thug adjacent, again, just that blaxploitation presentation. It from John Amos on Good Times to, I don't know, probably the Mac or something like that. But whatever, in that whole, it's in that range so when I saw the series, I have to acknowledge, yes, this is colonial fare, but it's doing something that I like. So when I like it, I should be even more critical of it, because some way they figured out my interests, in much like what I was saying with the buying power and the target of ad revenue. It is a surveillance of the interests of the target population, and then an abuse of those interests to get yours to become theirs. So all of that to say that, and again, as I engage students in my classroom, which is really my only sustained interaction, particularly at this point, with working class African diaspora communities, particularly young, variations of this problem appear, because it often begins with some attempt to challenge what I'm saying, and students start digging into the comfort zones that maybe will get their argument over, and I end up hearing versions of what I wanted to check out here, and it was just wild to see this from this particular person. I guess wild, given what I thought would have once thought of him when I was younger, and what I would have hoped for someone who is at least my age at this point, but who I feel like is fallen prey to this, what I've been calling crisis and civilizational crisis and methodology, where, because so much media is available, because it appears as though, and can be made to appear as though, so much of the media around us is studied, substantive, meaningful. It's, I think, more difficult now to get a clarity of analysis than it has ever been, and it may continue to get worse. So one of the channels that I've begun watching over the last few years is the Birdman 15, primarily for his relative to me, youthful Black cultural critiques of white cultural criticism, which I think is very well produced. It's often very funny. Good way to keep up with pop culture if you're not watching and all of these things. And other than his occasional praise for ADOS, which oddly, I don't think he fully understands, because his broader politics don't fit with that. And I've even, commented on his page once or twice about that, and it didn't go well for me. But whatever. It's just very difficult to make those points clear in a YouTube comment. So I just respectfully encouraged him to check some other stuff. He didn't seem interested. We'll move on. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's not like, anyway. But he started recently doing more debunks, joining the scientific debunking community. That is the scientific defense community against these ridiculous debunks that keep coming from people who, at their fundamental base, have a very conservative biblical point of view, as is made evident in this. Probably not going to see the clip, but in the interview that I'll link that you can watch in this video essay that Birdman did that you can watch in its entirety, that I'll link in the show description. So I'm just going to play this little bit of an intro, and then I'll come back to it. But it's from Lord Jamar's recent visit to Godfrey's platform, discussing being a flat earther. And this is from Birdman's critique of that. I'm just going to play a little bit of the intro so you get an idea of what's happening, and then we'll come back.
You're a flat earther, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Lord Jamar is a flat earther, everyone.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Birdman here. So we've got another rapper dipping his toes into the conspiracy kiddie pool, and of course, it's another flat earther. Let's hear what he has to say and see if I can't answer the questions he raises, shall we?
Why are you a flat earther, sir?
Because it's ridiculous to think that someone can live on a ball, to think that water could wrap itself around a spinning ball, to think that people could be on the bottom of a fucking ball and be upside down because some magical thing called gravity is allowing it to happen.
So that was a lot, but let's reiterate his points so that we may answer his claims. Number one, it's ridiculous to think that someone can live on a ball. Well, not quite. Most arthropods can walk upside down on a ball, so this idea isn't inherently ridiculous on its own, but we know what Lord Jamar means. So let's get to point number two. It's ridiculous to think water can wrap.
All right, so I'm just going to stop it there. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I just wanted to play just that little bit. The link is in the show description. It will be very shortly, and you can watch. It's a very entertaining hour or so to watch Birdman break down all that is wrong with that video with Lord Jamar's approach. Ultimately, what you end up seeing is, I will play this, what I clip and put on Instagram, because this is ultimately at least for me the crux, or part of the crux of where it all boils down to.
Because the Bible is a flat earth book. So if you believe in the Bible, you can't believe in the globe.
Damn.
I mean,
It was round because
the Bible is a flat earth book. So if you believe in the Bible, you can't believe in the globe.
And that's basically and what Birdman shows more, skillfully and with more evidence, that this is ultimately what all that is all about. It's a defense of a claim that some readers of the Bible, or readers of the Bible who read it closely enough, take away, that the earth is flat, and that the firmament described in the Bible is the dome. So there's a ton. So as I made in my note here, I don't know the science. I don't know enough of the science to do the work that would debunk all of this. I watch other people who do, in those debate communities. The science all comes out, and what's clear is that the anti-science community is just not prepared. Anyway, the point is, I don't know science, but I do know narrative development and the poverty of methods and analysis. So one of the things that becomes clear in watching Lord Jamar and others who take on those sort of political perspectives is that, and what keeps happening even in truly left spaces, is the methods we're bringing to this are insufficient, and they don't often enough start with our own bias. So one of the things I've always appreciated about my grad school experience is that a lot of the research methodology that I dealt with, the qualitative mostly, exclusively qualitative methodology that intentionally avoided charts and numbers, and I don't want to do any of that. I'm not saying there's no value to it. I just don't want to do any of it. And ultimately, to make the points that I need to make, it's not necessary. But the number one thing I like about it is that it's about these methods is, and our approach was that often enough, the first thing that you had to do was check where your biases are. So it's not always done properly, but it is very helpful to be reminded that, particularly if you want to put yourself into the research, you got to, interrogate the self a little bit, interrogate those preferences. And it is very difficult. So it doesn't clearly happen enough, especially when starting with an unquestionable belief system. And then depending on where people are with their relationship to particularly the Bible and those who believe it to be inerrant, then then methods start to really fall apart. But a lot of those same tendencies that are brought to bear religiously end up attaching and forming when it comes to politics and other forms of analysis as well. So, oh, and by the way, so speaking of this, so I reposted on this channel my exchange with Norman Finkelstein from last year. And relative to my channel, it is generated a level of interest that is uncommon. The critics who have been, and two of them, I just erased all their comments. I'm not even going to front. I just erased. It was, I don't mind criticism. What I do mind is anonymous, just vitriol. Where I did start to engage, particularly with one of them, it was to point out that their number one, but in each case, their biggest problems were that they were not adhering to what we had established as the methods for that discussion. That is, as is said in the video, this is just a good example because it's come up a couple times, particularly even when I shared other people's criticisms of Gerald Horne. I got a lot of hate, still do, from those saying that I was outside methodologically, et cetera, and so forth. And I'm criticizing books that I haven't read or read in full. The problem with that is that, one, I wasn't offering a criticism, was sharing someone else's. Or in the case of Finkelstein, although I mean, I'm not entirely mad at that. I think there's value in that. I'm open. I'm a little bit open to that. So, in other words, don't say anything or share anything negative until you've read every word. I don't know about all that, but I'm not entirely mad at that. What I'm more bothered by was with this Finkelstein thing, where we had agreed in advance. You will read. He wanted me only to read one chapter. And I said I read 3, including the intro and the epilogue, or excluding, I should say. So if you count those, it's more than that. And that what I was being critical of was his methodology. That is, to be critical of modern day scholars around his problems of quote unquote identity politics without engaging in the field, whether it's Africana studies or any related one, without engaging the work of other scholars who had already made these critiques, and without demonstrating any meaningful engagement, well, again, with the field or the related fields. Anyway, so I didn't even mean to take this detour, but the point was that the people who, and I was getting all this vitriol, and I'm like, you're not even watching and listening to what he said about it, and then taking an 8-minute clip from me out of a 90-minute. Anyway, my bad. I didn't mean to do that. And yeah, this is live, Ricky. This is live. That's why. Yeah, that's why that detour wasn't even supposed to happen. Anyway, but my point is, I understand how narratives get developed. I may not understand the science around all the flat Earth and all that other stuff, but I understand the narrative, how the narrative gets developed. And what Birdman's video does demonstrate is how the flat Earth narrative gets developed, distributed, and then can be deposited on a Godfrey podcast from someone with from my generation with some note, and then delivered as sound and legit. This is definitely what happens in terms of Black capitalism, buying power, and what we're going to look at. What I did mean for us to be a segue to look at this next piece here. But anyway, just everybody erase those last couple minutes from memory real quick. That was poorly done. Methodologically flawed. The whole approach was flawed, so therefore the results were flawed. But the point being that is the other point being that is also why I have become increasingly more critical of methods, of how people reach certain conclusions, and the environment that's pushing us in those directions. All right. All right. So this was also sent to me. And for some reason, I went ahead and watched. And so we're not going to watch certainly all of it. Again, I'll put the link in the show description. And when I watched it, it was on double speed, which I'm not going to play it at here. That wouldn't be fair, but it may feel longer to me now. But the other day, 60,000 views in one day. Roland Martin sat down with Vice President Kamala Harris to talk about her agenda and Black men, or for Black men. And so again, just yes, I've voted for Claudia and Karina, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm still a member of the Green Party, and would be more than happy to watch, participate in, maybe not participate in, host maybe debates about which of those should get anyone's vote. But so I acknowledge I'm not supporting Kamala, I'm not supporting Trump, I'm not supporting that form of engagement with electoral politics. That bias aside, what is targeting, much like when it comes to buying power and how economics are reported to Black audiences, politics are being reported in almost the same way. That is, what is good for advertisers and what is good for the ideology of a mainstream commercial outlet, or what must be the ideological constraints of a mainstream corporate commercial outlet. The results are basically the same. The political reporting is just as bad and biased and poorly sourced and referenced and et cetera, and just becomes a cheerleader for, in this case, Kamala Harris. In the same way, these so-called buying power reports just become cheerleading for advertising and marketing, ultimately all of which are basically the same. All right, so I just want to play this little bit of an exchange here, and yeah.
Madam Vice President,
Roland
glad to have you here. Ready to bring the funk?
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Let's get right to it. So right before I walked out there, someone posted a clip, and usually the clip. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do anything specifically for African Americans. But folk don't talk about what you said right before when you said that public policy that benefits Black folks, it benefits everybody else.
Right.
Even when we look at historically, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, it actually didn't just impact the African Americans, it impacted everyone else. But talk about that, because so many people have only clipped that one part without understanding the public policy implications.
So civil rights acts passed specifically for Black people that were over time reappropriated or rebranded into policy that would ultimately help others is not the same as I'm not going to do anything to help Black people, but Black people will benefit from that things that I do for everybody, which is no different than a rebranding that Obama had already begun to do in 2008 of Reagan's trickle-down economics. The other flaw here already is that, and since his name is evoked later, Dr. King and others had already become clear that that legislation, that civil rights legislation that Roland Martin says wasn't just for Black people and ended up benefiting everybody else, benefited everybody else because it appeased a bourgeois, Black bourgeoisie, a white liberal group in class that were, as King was saying, took advantage of all that was being done by the people at the bottom to benefit a handful at the relative top. It was also being used to benefit the state itself as a sort of sports washing version of, political, civil rights washing, or a woke imperium, to Chris Mott's point, of the state taking symbolic steps to appease aggrieved communities within their community and having that be projected internationally as something that demonstrates the U.S. as the liberal capitalist democracy of land of freedom that it claims to have always been. So the framing on this is already so disturbed in terms of any form of accuracy, and it is it's abusive. It is a sort of historical abuse and a disrespect of that struggle that Roland Martin would, of course, very articulately claim he is defending.
Too bad. That's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. Right. So you know that I mean, going back even before, but Dr. King was very clear, right? If you have certain policies that recognize, one, that not everybody starts out on the same base. If you have public policy, and I'm talking about economic public policy specifically at this point, but if you have public policy that recognizes historical barriers, and what we need to do then to overcome, first speak truth about them and then overcome them, that in the process of doing that, not only are you directly dealing with the injustices and the legal and procedural barriers that have been focused on Black folks, but by eliminating those barriers, everyone actually benefits, right? And I know that to be true. So my policies include what I know is going to have a profound impact on Black folks around economic policy, but everyone will benefit from them. I intend to create, as president, what I have named an opportunity economy that taps into the ambitions and the aspirations and the dreams of the American people, and then addresses those in a way that recognizes, unlike my opponent who was handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, not everyone has access to those kinds of resources, but when you give people access to those resources, they thrive and we all benefit. Opportunity economy.
So I gotta say, okay. So again, King is mentioned, who in his own lifetime was already very critical of the Civil Rights Act, of the Voting Rights Act. He said that these were the equivalent of rushing the football to the 50-yard line and claiming touchdown. He said that he recognized that capitalism and white supremacy were barriers that were uncircumvented or unsubverted by those policies. And again, he recognized that the only people benefiting from them were the state, white liberals, and the Black bourgeoisie, and all of that at relative levels. I mean, obviously not equally. So then she starts throwing in those words like ambition and opportunity. These are all buzzwords that come out of that. Well, they predated, but are again weaponized in that Nixonian moment that are just being repeated here again. And as others have pointed out, and I think we should be returning, as much as possible to the issue shouldn't be opportunity, it should be outcome. We want equal outcomes, not equal opportunity, because there is no such thing. And none of the policies she's advocating do anything to undermine any of that. So the reference to King, again, who said, quite in contradiction to her small business claims and others and Black capitalist claims, said that does not work. He is very clear. I've covered this repeatedly. But it's in Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. He is explicit in saying Black business and buying Black are insufficient. We need massive federal involvement, not home loans and small business loans and claims of an opportunity economy. That's not what he was talking about. He's talking about massive billions of dollars of investment in creating a set of equal outcomes, not opportunity. But this is just all a complete bastardization, and it would be more. It would just, I know that, I guess they can't do it. They can't be honest, but it would just be more honest. This has always been, it's a recurrent issue for me. Just admit you're not King. You're not Malcolm. You love and respect them. And with all due love and respect, you're doing something else. You're be Ron Walters, who, again, to his credit, said, I respect them. I'm not them. I'm Democratic Party kind of guy. I love Black people, but I'm a Democratic Party policy kind of guy. So that's where I'm at. I'm not doing anti-capitalism, anti-colonialism. I'm not doing revolution. I'm not doing even what I understand to be Dr. King's politics, which are much more close to that. Just do that. But they don't do that. They keep falsely wrapping themselves in these people and their arguments and their struggles and doing exactly what King in his lifetime said he didn't want done, which is to have the Black bourgeoisie take credit for his struggle, or the struggle that he was nominally in charge, or the head of.
That's why I say I'm going to make sure that we give first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance.
Useless.
Because again, we know that when you look at the history of how Black folks have been denied the opportunity for home ownership, be it redlining or what we know has still been happening around a bias in home appraisals, that it is a barrier to achieving intergenerational success. But when we address it by doing things like helping folks get their foot in the door with a down payment assistance, they will have the ability to be on that track of intergenerational wealth building. My plan for extending and expanding the child tax credit, $6,000 for the first year of a child's life, because our parents, just like any parent, have a natural desire to parent their children well, but not always the resources.
None of this is going to help.
So $6,000 in the first year of your child's life helps you buy that car seat or crib or the clothes that are necessary to build the foundation for that important phase of their development that gets them on the right track.
I do want to do the housing piece, because what I think is not being talked about.
Yeah, this one right here is wild.
Building a new housing stock.
Yes.
And so because of the home foreclosure crisis, we literally built under 9 or 10 million homes in 2020. We're underbuilt now as well. The fewest homes being built since the 1940s.
Yes.
So a huge part of this problem with housing is that we don't have the stock. So talk about that piece there, because you got demand, but you don't actually have right now the available homes.
All right, we gotta stop that. This part was bizarre to me. The setup alone, before we even get to her answer, the setup alone is ridiculous. He just said there's too many homes and not enough demand for the homes. Now, this goes unexplained by either of them, and I'm sure he would want us to believe that he's talking about the fact that actual potential home buyers can't find a place to buy, or aren't there, or don't, those who would be considered potential home buyers don't have the initial startup cash to buy all of these millions of homes that are just sitting empty. So I'm happy to be checked on this. I've already made some perhaps insufficiently methodologically prepared comments on methods, but just a little bit from last year, the United Way, National Capital Area. This is not some radical. You know, despite how many homes are in the U.S., over 580,000 Americans are experiencing homelessness. There are currently 28 vacant homes for every one person experiencing homelessness in the U.S. So again, I'm sure what would be said to me from Roland or his defenders would be, I'm not talking about the homeless. I'm talking about people who would actually be counted as part of a potential home buying community. Right? I'm sure that's, is that, am I wrong in thinking that that's what he would say, or his defenders would say? But shouldn't the issue be a reframing of the point around housing away from a silly $25,000 loan that's going to only lock you in at best to a 30-year mortgage, or the fact that we have plenty of space for people who need places to live? What we need is for some policy that puts them in it. Why are we talking about 25,000 home loans, a $6,000 tax, this, that, and the third? If you have all of these people, and then here you could say, like, this is not based on race. So you could say, I'm doing this for everybody. So that was one thing. The other thing I went back to, because I remember, being a member myself of the Poor People's Army, that this is something that Sherry Honkala and them are always dealing with. So I just went to the poorpeoplesarmy.org. Maybe Kamala and them could swing on through and just check this out just a little bit. And this is Jill Stein. I'm just saying, but just a little bit of, it's framing the issue in a I think an important way, given what we're just heard from Roland Martin, and before we hear from Kamala.
Everything that they talk about is about money, 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 but they release no resources into the communities. We can't breathe when we have poor people who are put outside of their homes, who don't have resources, who don't have access to health care or anything like that. I can't breathe because of that. I can't breathe when they're using my taxpaying dollars to fund the war that I don't agree with. We got the Miss Jill Stein here that's got a policy, that's got a program, that's got actual things that she's going to be able to implement as president.
My name is Jill Stein. I am the Green Party candidate for president, and I'm here to lift up the voices of the people. This is the real convention. It's not just Donald Trump, who is a threat to our democracy, who is a fascist threat. It is the Democratic Party as well. Trump interferes typically after the election, and Democrats typically interfere in advance of the election. Some people say that, but the Democrats are the solution to fascism. They're actually not. They're the cause. And let me tell you how that is. Because you had Bill Clinton implementing NAFTA, which sent lots of jobs overseas. You had Barack Obama, who was passing the Wall Street bailouts, which bailed out Wall Street to the tune of trillions of dollars, while ordinary homeowners got thrown out of their homes. The long and short of it is that about 30 million people have lost their jobs over the last 30 years. Lots of it due to Democratic policies.
We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving America.
That is what drives the surge to the right when people are insecure and then they're goaded into demonizing others, and it becomes a game of divide and conquer.
Here in America, we only have Americans. We don't need to be a country dominated by foreign illegal immigrants.
Sorry, I don't want you here.
And you're demonizing immigrants, which is a lot of, what the right wing typically does. Democrats are driving those policies. Furthermore, it's the Democrats who are funding the most extreme Republicans.
We will make America great again.
This may sound kind of crazy. It actually is very crazy. You may have heard of the Pied Piper strategy, which was how Donald Trump was lifted up by the Hillary Clinton press contacts, who lifted up Trump thinking that he would be the easiest Republican to beat because he was the most extreme. But actually he wasn't. But meanwhile, they put a lot of money into him. In 2022, they're still using that game plan, and they spent in 2022 in the midterms $50 million funding the most extremist Republican candidates for Senate and Congress.
What at first glance looks like a typical campaign message for a Republican primary candidate is actually an ad paid for by Democrats.
Democrat Serve is responsible for the content of this ad.
It's part of a national strategy. Official Democratic campaign arms and outside groups are pumping millions of dollars into Republican contests in at least 7 states, betting that Trump-faithful, election-denying candidates will be less competitive in November.
So they help launch the careers of very extreme Republicans because they'll be easier to beat in the general. But in the meantime, they launch the political careers of real extremists.
So again, I'll put the link to the Poor People's Army, but it's poorpeoplesarmy.org, and that's right on the front page there. You can catch that at your convenience and learn more about that. But my point again is well, one, the Roland Martin's framing of that question is so odd. So again, he's talking at best. He's either talking about the black bourgeoisie, who are the only ones likely to be able to buy homes that are he's saying now vacant or unpurchased, which is again also demonstrating a preference for the concern of developers over people, because it's a concern for those who's going to buy our empty houses. If people don't have any money or don't have that $25,000 startup. But then it's also ignoring this issue of houselessness and people who are living in precarious situations on a day-to-day basis when there's apparently plenty of homes. And then, of course, we've seen reported, I think Sherry said it when she was on with us, whenever that was last time, that $20 billion takes care of all the houselessness. And we see more money and interest being spent by Democrats on defeating third-party candidates and defending themselves against right-wing lunatics than we see actual development or investment in people's needs or community. So this is all right.
You actually presented the point the way you did, because let's also go back to what you know in my history on this in terms of being attorney general.
Presented the point.
When I took on the big banks, and because they were doing predatory lending, and a lot of the folks who were targeted with that predatory lending were black folks who are being told, oh, you don't need to worry about it. We're going to give you this money. And so you can buy a home without actually doing the analysis to figure out if they'd be able to afford to pay it back, right? And folks trusted the banks that if you're going to loan me the money, then you must have determined I have the ability to actually, right, be able to see it through. And the foreclosure rates for black homeowners during that crisis.
53% of black wealth wiped out.
That's exactly right, Roland. I took on and sued the big banks and ended up delivering.
But more importantly, 53%, to the extent that that's an accurate number, 53% of black wealth is defined as wealth based on having a mortgage. This is, again, part of the problem I was talking about with the buying power methodology and all this other stuff. You're reporting black wealth as being wrapped up in home ownership, in owning homes that are not yet paid off, that can be foreclosed upon and people thrown out of. So what are we doing calling that wealth in the first place? Now you're using that loss of wealth as a way to justify Kamala coming back in and doing more of the same getting someone in with a handful of people with a $25,000 loan to take on another debt that they may or may not be able to pay off, or more importantly, doesn't matter because it's a debt that they have to pay off.
$20 billion for the homeowners of California. The former President Obama recently mentioned the fact that I actually took on the Department of Justice and the administration, saying, I'm not going to do a deal that brings crumbs to the table.
But not just when you're Attorney General, because even right now, the DOJ, Civil Rights Division, the redlining lawsuits, mortgage discrimination.
We have been taking all of it on. Mortgage discrimination, also discrimination in home appraisals. We've taken on the fact that, you know, those stories about a Black family is trying to get their home appraised. They want to get a second mortgage, they want to sell the house, whatever. And they bring in the appraiser. The appraiser looks around, looks at the family pictures, and appraises it for less than it's worth. The family knows that. They're not stupid.
All right, hold on. Let me move this ahead. This is. Let me just get to this one last part here.
That because
let's see where
it's a former president and running to be president again, who is constantly fanning the flames of hate and division in our country. Constantly.
You often asked about Israel, Gaza, Ukraine. I never hear it come up conversations about Africa. You traveled there. Fastest growing, 6 of the top 10 fastest growing economies. Very young continent. A lot of folks complain about Chinese investment. But in terms of your presidency dealing with the continent in those countries, what will that look like? Because that's the future of this world when you look at, again, those economies. And I've been to several countries, and those presidents are saying, hey, we want to be able to.
You came with me. Come on now.
Well, no, I didn't go that trip, but if you win, I'll go on the next one.
Well, let me tell you. So this has been, you're preaching to the choir. Listen, I believe so strong.
Just so, though she didn't know who was and was not on that trip, apparently, the point is it's embedded journalism. That's the point.
Yeah. And that is part of the work I've done as vice president, that we've got to change the narrative around the relationship between the United States and the continent of Africa. For a long time, it has been one that has been about aid as opposed to partnership.
Or investment, right.
Partnership.
Yep.
Which includes U.S. investment. So the work I've done as vice president has been to begin to change that relationship, and including the delegation that I took to the continent, which was focused on, I brought billions of dollars and have worked on billions of dollars of U.S. investment in the continent and in countries on the continent of Africa, looking at what we need to do around. Also, I've been partnering with technology companies around digital inclusion, so ensuring that folks have access to fintech, to financial banking and sectors. But to your point, the median age on the continent is 19. By 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth will be on the continent of Africa. That is so, so, so exciting. If we see it in terms of global policy, for the opportunity it presents to invest in partnership and to do the work that is about understanding the mutual benefit.
So just and again, I'll put the link so you can check me. I did watch it initially at 2x speed, so maybe I missed the depth, the in-depth discussion they had of AFRICOM, of the Sahel and uprisings there, and why that some people think that those uprisings are necessary. But none of that is brought up. He doesn't ask about any of that. He doesn't ask about, obviously, the Democratic Party's complicity in supporting AFRICOM or the previous colonial regimes and relationships held between these countries in Africa and the rest of the world. And again, I just love that, you know, the willingness to be embedded on a continental trip. The premier Black news outlet on a trip with the president is just bananas. So, Now, again, the person who sent this to me said in their email that their primary concern was when Kamala says she's not going to do anything particular for Black people, that he fears that we're moving farther away from reparations. And again, that's not a non-goal for me, but it's not high up on the agenda. And again, the politics and the movements that would be required to build to get reparations from this country, we might as well, by that level of organization, we might as well get way more than that. If a movement is built to change this country's politics to where it would offer reparations just to Black people here, descendants of the process of enslavement here, it suggests to me that there's a level of organization that would likely demand more than that, maybe even become more militant. But we're so far away from that. This is clearly not that. And maybe worse is that the people who would be in position, and maybe that's why they're in position to raise questions, they're not raising these questions. So that's why we do it here and in these satellites of spaces. I mean, that's so. So, all right. So, other than, I will check back in the chat if anybody has comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation, contemplation, condemnation. Please re-raise them. And then the only other question I had was that if for folks either who are members or patrons or who would consider it, what more would you like to see from me on this show and this platform? I'm interested in any of that as well. And if all the links will be in the show description if they're not there already. I don't honestly remember what I put there. Maybe not. Maybe none of them. But they will be as soon as I wrap up. I'm checking. Nope, there's nothing there now. So I will. Wow, I didn't put any of them in there. My bad. I'll get right to it. But yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I got to put a couple things in there. So no, I don't. But they will be. They're not yet. Maybe how you got to it, reflect on your personal life. Wait, I would love to see you talk more about your political trajectory over the years on Patreon. Yeah, I could do stuff like that. That's not a bad idea. Let me write that down. I mean, let me write that down. That's not a bad idea. There is, there is one other thing there's one more thing I'm going to do here real quick. I just realized I skipped something that I could, would want to check out with you all real quick before we wrap up. But yeah, I can definitely do that. Can BLM become an organization? I always wonder. You know what? That's a very good question. The Black Liberation Media Collective is still developing and evolving, and I'm not too sure that. Honestly, I'm not too sure that it's would be that far away from that. In if the trajectory, speaking of trajectories, is continued. But I'm not sure. Please mask up when you speak publicly, Dr. Ball. Thank you all for your respect. I can't promise to do that. I'm not even going to lie to you. I respect the spaces I'm invited to. But in their policies, but I'm not going to lie to you and promise to do that. Yeah, Kamala demands way too much money. That he is the sole reason all movements are to this point unsuccessful. So beyond just Black Liberation Media, Kamau is single-handedly holding us all back. It's remarkable that he's able to do that, or that any one person is in such a position, but how can we be down with Black Liberation Media and all that? Do you have to be jumped in, handshaking? No, just go to blackliberationmedia.org and you can find contact. I believe there's a contact page there. You can find out obviously how to donate, but if you have show ideas or other ways you want to support, yeah. No, I have not seen the new trailer for Michael B. Jordan, a Black horror film. Oh, no, I have not. Thank you for your membership, Sayla, and I appreciate that you like that. Yeah, the end of Black capitalism was a fun discussion, and it should be over. I mean, I believe that's when I was talking about chapter 6 of Baradaran's book. She's got a new book out on neoliberalism I haven't gotten to yet, but so many things. In fact, you can't believe she didn't mention AFRICOM, Esme? Really? I can. I would be shocked. I would have honestly been shocked if she said something about AFRICOM. For real. And especially if I would have been even more shocked if Roland asked her about it. I mean, the combined shock of Roland asking her and she saying something about it might have been too much for me. I might have had my Fred Sanford moment. Oh, wait, who's somebody just said? I swear I didn't see that first. He looks like Lamont from Sanford and Son. Oh, boy. Thank you for joining. The one from BK. Thank you very much. Welcome. No, it's not that it's a secret. It's that by mentioning AFRICOM, they have to, I would think, engage in a set of politics and potential discussions they don't want to get into. It's not so much that it's a secret. Maybe they would try to flip it into a way that they're spreading democracy through asymmetrical warfare. I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did talk about it. Maybe I missed it. Maybe she's talked, eloquently about it elsewhere. Maybe Roland has had panels about AFRICOM on his platform. I don't watch everything for sure. So, all right, let me show you. One story came up the other day in the Chronicle for Higher Education. A student group's endorsement of violence splits Columbia's faculty. And again, I'll link this story as well. Faculty members at Columbia University say they disagree with a pro-Palestinian student group's recent endorsement of violence, but some support the group's right to express that sentiment. On October 8th, Columbia University Apartheid Divest, or QUAD, revoked an apology it made in the spring on behalf of a student activist who posted a video of himself saying, "Zionists don't deserve to live, and be grateful that I'm not going out and emming Zionists." The group, an unrecognized coalition of student organizations, said in last week's statement that the apology was written by several organizers, not the student, and did not represent the group's values. The Tuesday statement went on to spell out the group's political stances, such as supporting liberation by any means necessary, including armed resistance. It emphasized, apparently referring to Israel, that in the face of violence from the oppressor equipped with the most lethal military force on the planet, where you've exhausted all peaceful means of resolution, violence is the only path forward, end quote. Since the October 7th attack, faculty members across the country have been some of the greatest allies for student protesters battling administrators. They have also themselves lost jobs and their personal information posted online and been arrested at protests. And then they just sort of, there's a back and forth about, so a couple faculty said here, supporting armed resistance by people who are occupied by a foreign power is legitimate under international law. Number one, and guys said. Number two, I do not support Hamas. Number three, I do support the students' right to free speech and nonviolent protest. So that to me was the summary, the perfect summary of how a lot of faculty and a lot of, well, I'll say I think it's a perfect summary of the faculty interviewed for this story responded. That some condemned obviously the ideas, some were more supportive, but supportive in this way, that legally people who are occupied by a foreign power are allowed to engage in armed resistance. But at the same time, I don't support Hamas. So I don't understand. I'm fascinated by, but now one of the reasons, I admit I'm just interested in what's happening on campuses, but another thing that is reason that is of interest to me is because in preparation for Saturday with Renee over on Black Liberation Media, I am reading the new book, I Am Maroon, the true story of an American political prisoner. And in that book, it is fascinating. It's fascinating. And in that book, obviously we'll be dealing with this more then, chapter 9 of People's Army, I said, so I was reading this, and then I later on read that Chronicle story. But this chapter opens up, an armed struggle is never undertaken lightly. It is always the final straw, a decision made by a man with his back up against the wall when all other means have been tried and have failed. And I just noted the similarity in the statements. And this book, it's a great, but it's very uncomfortable. We'll talk about it Saturday, but it's particularly for me an uncomfortable read. But the overlap in that point, and the point being the centering in the way I think both of those the statements do, the violence of the oppressor. Like, you all are creating the inability to liberate by other means. Why? Number one, I guess, well, maybe not number one, but why? And then what then are we supposed to do? So, yeah, it is a great book, and I am struggling with it. I struggle with these books in particular, these kinds of books, but this one is a struggle. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday and what I think are the guests that we're going to have. But yeah, it's so, all right. If I missed them, please recycle any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony. Otherwise, we can wrap this one up. Please, if you missed it, go back over to Black Liberation Media and check out the Remix Morning Show. And I'm not sure what else is coming up over there today. Please go check out, particularly if I didn't know Ka or much about his music, to be honest, but if you have any appreciation for real MCing, and you have an appreciation for those in your comradely circles who appreciate someone else's art, they hosted a very good discussion about Ka and his life and work earlier today, so please go check that out as well. He was definitely a dope MC. Uncomfortable because it has you reflect on yourself or something else. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, good people, please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you can, join if you like, and much more to come here. Definitely much more to come over on Black Liberation Media as well. And as always, like Fred Hampton used to say, peace only if you're willing to fight for it. And we'll catch you next time right here at
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
What do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.